So you're telling him about your girlfriend like that? Oh my gosh, I'm so not like that. I'm super chill. Like if, my man needs to go out with his boys, like you want to hang out with your boys, I would just let you because I understand that you guys need like your boys' night out. I would not call my man and I'm not gonna call my boyfriend if that happens because you did your quality time, right? And also, I'm like, when you were telling me that when you go out with your girlfriend, you need to pay all the time, I am so not like that. I'm like, go Dutch. I'm always going Dutch. I'm always 50-50 because you have to know I'm also very independent. I'm also a professional. I have a career. I don't want my boyfriend to feel like you need to take care of me because I can take care of myself. But, I always want my boyfriend to feel he's the most special. So even though I'm a career woman, but I still cook for you, and I will still like clean your house. And oh my gosh, you were telling me how your girlfriend likes to go shopping. I'm so not like that. I'm so outdoorsy. I like to go trekking. Like I have to be one with nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't need to like pay a penny with me. You're gonna feel so calm and relaxed. Again, I like to go like trekking, hiking. That's why you were saying like your girlfriend likes to go shopping also for makeup. I'm so not a makeup girl. I'm so minimalistic. You wear makeup. Sometimes I do wear makeup if I have to go to work, but like not all the time. I just like to be who I am, you know what I mean? Like I felt confident in my own skin. So I'm like not that trouble person. I'm gonna make your life so easier. That's how I feel, right? I would feel like I want my boyfriend to feel like they would have an angel next to him. So that's how I feel. And I felt so sorry for you, like having that kind of a girlfriend. But I know hopefully that she's gonna be better. And I know that she will be. Maybe she should be friends with me so that she can be more like me. You know what I mean?
First, please drink.
Oh, okay.
Drink first.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm thirsty. Yeah, I like to talk a lot, by the way. But do you like girls that talk a lot or not talk?
Not.
Oh, okay. Well, I will drink and then maybe we can watch a movie or something.
Yeah.
So
You
we'll
like
have more
movie,
time.
right?
Yes, I do like movies. What do you like? What do you think about that?
Oh my goodness.
Did I get an Oscar?
I'm sorry, I know I was supposed to cut you off, but I loved it. What a brilliant scene that was performed by
our colleague
Caroline and our creative team right there.
I'll have a drink.
Cheers, you guys. As you guys can see, welcome back to the C Morning Show. Those
I'm gonna cross
were
a little
just
bit.
some examples of what we call pick-me behavior. Yes, why are we doing this and setting the scene for you? Well, that's because this pick-me phenomenon has been on the rise in recent days. A pick-me girl would try to attract the opposite sex, as you can see, by claiming that they're different from most women, especially when it comes to feminine sorts of traits, right?
That's right. So sometimes it's a counterpart, right?
Yeah.
What some women are, and especially when a guy or a man or a boy is telling the female friend, saying that, my girlfriend or my spouse or whatever is that way, and then she would say the opposite side of that person. Yeah. Isn't that right, Mama? We're going to get more into that though. But is this a situation where this pick-me behavior is a attention seeker category, and maybe one don't realize if she's a pick-me girl, and can it happen to also boys and also men? If so, what is it called? Now, to answer all this question, we'll now have a chat with personal growth clinical psychologist Maria Alyssia. Thank you so much for joining us, and good morning, Maria.
Welcome
so
back to the show.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, a big round of applause for Caroline and Australia, everyone, for that brilliant performance. I'm really glad you set the scene. First of all, because a lot of people aren't aware, like you and I were not aware at the start of the program in regards to this. So before we say pick-me girl phenomenon, let's say pick-me behavior, because I'd like to set a bit of a disclaimer, and perhaps you can confirm this or not. This is not limited to just girls doing this to boys. That was just the scene that we set, correct? And perhaps you could describe in more detail, more into what Caroline said, what pick-me behavior actually is.
So pick-me behavior, like you said, extends to both males and females. Actually, it's just that it's more popular, I suppose, within females.
Right.
Or that the trend focuses on females. But it generally refers to people who would try to gain the opposite gender's acceptance and validation by adopting masculine/feminine traits that are accordance to
Like
that gender.
like we would often hear like, oh, she's just one of the guys, correct? Like something
yes.
like that. Okay.
Like, I'm not one of the girls, you know, like I'm
Right.
not like the rest.
Okay.
So they would try to distinguish themselves from the rest of the pack, essentially.
I see.
So then they can get picked or preferred and be the object of that romantic attraction as well. But I do want to stress, just in case, because I see the term pick me syndrome as well being thrown around online. And I want to stress that it's not actually a clinical disorder.
Right.
It's not, you know, an actual illness or something.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to get the wrong idea about it. So it's not in our diagnostic manual
Okay.
at all.
Yeah. So it could also happen to men. I'm kind of curious. Well, that because I would think if it was a woman who has this pick me behavior, would be like that. But for men, that would be awkward, wouldn't it be?
True, if we think of the men as exactly acting like the females
Yeah.
in that scenario, that would be totally awkward, and that's why they perform different behaviors actually.
Right.
Yes, because the root of pick-me behavior is actually in the patriarchal society, and so we have to remember that in these circumstances, males and females come from different power status.
Okay.
For females, we start lower, I suppose, you know, and so we have to sort of bring ourselves up
Yeah.
to try to adopt these masculine opinions and traits. But for men, they would have to, in a way, like bring themselves down.
Yeah.
So then they would try to be humble, let's say, you know, to
Right.
appeal to these feminine, soft traits. And
Okay.
so they would use a lot of self-deprecating jokes and statements to be able to make their point come across and get women to empathize with
Yeah.
them.
It's like, oh, you
Yeah.
got me. You know how I
Yes.
feel what some men don't know because they're too alpha. But you have this sensitive side of you that you understand me. Oh, I got that.
Right, because if you do it exactly the opposite, then as a man, you would just end up being one of the girls.
Yes.
And that would be totally fine. You know what I mean? But it would have to be. You're right. I guess in society we would say we would be not as tough as the other guys.
Yes.
But thus eliminating this masculinity that some people are not turned on by anyway, right? That's actually a really good point. So you did mention that this is not a clinical diagnosis.
Yeah.
What is it exactly? Is it a personality trait? Is it, and if it is, like, what is it? How do you describe this personality trait? Like, would narcissistic be one of the descriptions for it?
I see. That's an interesting topic you brought up because if we think about narcissism in opposed to like pick-me behaviors,
Right.
we can see some similarities between the two of them. So both of them will want to appear, I guess, superior to everyone else because they're unique in that sense.
It's all about me, right?
It's
And
all
the word
about
me is what got to me. Okay.
Yes. And they would also try to maybe bring others down as well, again, to assert themselves as this dominant person that you should choose them. And in a way, both of them are deeply rooted in that sense of deep insecurity. But what distinguishes narcissism and pick-me behavior is the goal of these behaviors. So
Yeah.
for pick-me's, they want that acceptance. They want that
Yeah.
validation from men, right, or from women in the case of males.
Right.
But for narcissists, they already genuinely believe that they're superior to everyone else.
right.
So it's like a given, you know, like
Yeah.
I am better than you, so
That's
I
right.
don't need that validation
Yeah.
anymore consciously.
Well, like you better pick me because I'm the best amongst
Yes,
all.
yes.
Similarities, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So I wouldn't refer to it as a personality trait. I think the phenomenon itself is
Yeah.
just something that's popularized on social media. I think it started on Twitter in 2016.
Correct.
But it's just used to refer to women or men who has these specific tendencies or characteristics. It's just that unfortunately now it's become blown out of proportion and it's used to sort of bring down, I guess, feminine traits as a whole.
Yeah.
That makes it tricky, doesn't it?
That's right. Like,
these
how
things
would you know?
overlap.
Yeah. So, in regards to this, though, because you were not saying this is a trait, this is just a phenomenon. But if someone adapts to it and becomes their trait and becomes their personality, what will be, what will be the future? What will be the ongoing, reason for them?
I think it's important to remember, like I mentioned, at the heart of it, it's all about the patriarchal society, right?
Yeah.
So it's internalized misogyny, to be honest. And so because of that, we all have these like unwritten rules about the types of traditional gender stereotypes that we have to
How
adhere
things
to.
should be, right?
Yes,
How
how things should be.
Yeah.
And because of that, at least in the women's perspective, we have to engage in what's called patriarchal bargaining. So we have to compromise to these gender roles and sort of conform to them, just so that we can get that acceptance from everyone else.
Okay.
So this comes in the form of, let's say, being the perfect housewife.
Right.
Yeah.
Being the woman who could do it all, career or childcare wise.
Yeah.
And that also includes being a pick-me as well in that sense. So that's important to understand, because at heart it's quite systemic in nature, because it's something that we don't really have control over. On the other hand, there's also individual factors as well. Pick-me's tend to have a low self-esteem, according to research. And so that makes it susceptible for them to then see other people as competition, especially in terms of females.
Right.
Rather than, these are allies that you can actually recruit to be able to tackle the core problem, which is misogyny.
Yes.
Right. So again, because you said this is systemic, if you zoom out, this highlights a much larger problem that we're probably not going to be able to solve then, because what it does is our society as a whole, this is how things are, and it's very difficult to change. So is this actually a problem we need to solve, or is it a problem that we just need to identify? For example, I'll pose you this question. As a guy, I have plenty of friends of the opposite gender. How am I supposed to tell which one is the pick-me girl and which one is just my cool friend?
The hidden agenda.
I mean, it's very hard for me to tell because I'm just a guy that sees what I see, right?
That's true. I think in a sense we can categorize the pick-me symptoms, into two areas. One is that they will definitely bring down their gender and anything that's related to masculinity or femininity, depending on what gender they are, for example.
So for example, like what Caroline said, like, I'm not like the other girls,
Exactly.
something like that.
I don't do makeup, I'm all natural,
Right.
I'm not in touch with my emotions because that's too girly, let's say, things
Okay.
like that. So they would do that, they would distinguish themselves, so then they are set apart and they're easily picked in that sense. But on the other hand, they would also try to adopt the opposite gender's characteristics, just so that, again, they are setting themselves apart as different, and they're getting that sort of validation and acceptance too. So that's one, if you are curious which ones of your cool friends might be having pick-me behavior.
Right.
But as a whole, I like that you mentioned whether it's something you have to just identify or if it's something that we can actually tackle. I think in a lot of ways, even though it's systemic in nature and that's kind of impossible to break down as a whole, we can still have conversations around these things. It's possible to sort of build awareness over it and to encourage these people to take on a different perspective. And it's also possible, like with all behaviors, it's possible to endorse these certain behaviors that are more helpful and to erase the behaviors that are not as helpful, like pick-me behaviors. So we can actually show them that it's unacceptable, this is not how it's supposed to work. This is, you don't have to bring other people down to make yourself feel better.
Because I do believe that there are many of my friends of the opposite gender that truly does share my hobbies. For example, they do like sports. It doesn't mean they have a hidden agenda. Exactly.
But I'm friends with your wife, so we're very close.
Exactly.
I mean, that's where the rules is, right? Like, I want to be
Right.
friends with you. I have to also be very close to your wife.
That's right. That's
You know,
the
to
respect
have that.
you're showing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true.
So if you're friends.
We can talk we can still talk basketball. don't
That's
worry.
it. Sorry. But Maria, in regards to that, do you think there's like an extreme level though to this? Because if we're talking about a pick-me behavior, let's say that person would say something that the other person, the other opposite sex wants to hear, they could like share fake stories about them or become like an imposter. So that person will like us, and an imposter is already, a clinical, traits, right?
That's possible actually, and it's quite sad if you think about it, that they have to live a lie in order for other people to accept
Right.
them. I think at heart, without naming any sort of diagnosis or whatnot, you can say that it leads to identity issues. Like, these are people who will not be able to form a very clear idea of what their identity is, because all their life they would be just appealing to a certain gender's gaze. They would formulate their entire personality around that just to gain acceptance. And that's gonna cause a lot of trouble further down the line. These are people who will become susceptible to things like depression, anxiety, and other common mental health issues as well, because they don't have that strong footing within themselves.
Yeah, because especially in this day and age, we've seen some quite people like that, where they're just like a sponge. Wherever they're, part of this group, they want to be in.
They can just be different people depending on who they're around, right?
That's right.
That tends to be a trait that is more exposed now that we have social media.
Yes.
Because people are like, oh, this is what people like to see on social media these days, and then they end up doing that. So how do we avoid? I mean, where do we draw the line? To a certain extent, I would argue that because of society and because we as general, just as human beings, we try to, get along with people, right?
Of course.
And but there is that line that, like Caroline said, we can cross that line and then we can be somebody we're not. So how do we avoid crossing over that line? How do we know to set those limits for ourselves so that we don't become a pick-me person rather than at least just being able to get along with somebody on a day-to-day basis?
I think as a baseline, it's really important to remember that we're human beings, we're social beings, and it's normal for us to want some form of validation and
That's what I mean.
acceptance to everyone else. It's normal for us to share interests or want to get to know other people and, like bond with them through that extent.
Sure.
Doesn't mean that you are a pick-me
Right,
from
that's
doing
what I'm
that,
trying to say, right.
It's only when that behavior, when it crosses over to the point of it damages, let's say, our ability to function in everyday life.
Okay.
It damages our sense of self as well, that becomes unclear because we're just trying so hard for other people to like us. Then that becomes something that we should really worry about, something that we have to talk to other people about as well, because if we don't stop it there, then like you said, it's just we're just gonna be a sponge.
Yes.
Like where's the end to that?
Yeah.
There's no telling.
You
And
can
I
never
guess-
show your true colors.
Right.
Yeah.
And negativity, I guess, like you mentioned, right? When you start putting down other people, that's when you know you've crossed the line because you're
Exactly.
not actually
Yeah.
trying to do anything positive anymore.
What I learned today in the morning is you have to love yourself. You have to love
Definitely.
yourself. You have to tackle your insecurities and never discredit anybody else for you to gain, to elevate yourself. I mean,
Well
it's
said.
easier to say, especially for us. Maybe we've been living in this earth quite for some time right now.
We're
But,
old.
I know, but we're wise, we're
Yes.
mature. But I to live in this day and age as a teen or a young adult, I'm pretty sure is very difficult other than, when we were back then.
Yeah, so like real quick before we come to our conclusions, is this something that we can identify in our young ones? Because you did mention with wisdom, it comes the ability to recognize these things, but are our children at risk of having these sort of behaviors because more and more of them are exposed to social media and these social conformities?
Sure. Just like they're at risk at being exposed to other quote unquote negative behaviors as well. It's just the same. And as parents, I guess, or as caregivers, the best thing that we can do is to build that line of very open and safe communication with them, because they need to know that this is not something that they should be ashamed about talking about or asking for help about. And it's not something that they have to tackle alone as well. Because if, let's say, the parents or caregivers are confused on how to manage this, then it's possible to seek to, people like us, the professionals, to be able to navigate these difficult conversations. Because, again, roots of it, systemic in nature, it's quite hard to deal with it on our own. So let's, make it a team effort.
And as we're parents with 3 kids, I think the only way that we can do this and tackle this problem is to love them equally. Sometimes, we felt like we always put the number one always first, and then the second and third felt left behind.
Right.
And then when they grow up, they could have this kind of
Have that
behavior.
same mental- yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for discussing this, what turns out to be quite a deep topic,
Yes.
because it does actually expose a lot of other things that we're not aware of.
Not as deep as my acting roles right there.
I thoroughly enjoyed that, by the way.
By the way, I wish it was that easy to identify because you did stress on a lot of things, but a lot of times these things aren't as easy to
Vague.
see, right? A lot more vague, that's
Yes.
right. All right, well, hope that you were able to find this discussion insightful as well and identify pick-me behavior when you see it. In the meantime, though, we were going to take another short break here on the program. When we return, we're going to share with you some of the highlights from last night's and the final debate for the upcoming presidential election on Indonesia Votes 2024. Stay with us. Thank you.